This game, which shares a title with the series it began, was released in 1986 for the Famicom, better known as the Nintendo Entertainment System in the West. While lacking in story and world building, the game made up for it with amazing for the time gameplay. However, this leaves us with very little to work with for this lore-based video. The story of the game is told entirely through the manual and a short paragraph in the game's intro. In the peaceful land of Hyrule, the demon beast known as Ganon stole the Triforce of Power, an ancient relic. In order to keep him from gaining the Triforce of Wisdom, the Princess Zelda, its wielder, separated it into 8 parts and scattered them throughout the kingdom. She was soon after kidnapped by Ganon. Impa, Zelda's nursemaid, was able to escape and found a young boy who was just passing through and told him what had transpired. The boy, named Link, decided to help stop Ganon. Retrieving a sword from a helpful man nearby, Link began his journey to save Hyrule from the demon. And he does so. After collecting the 8 shards of the Triforce of Wisdom, Link lays siege upon Ganon's fortress beneath Spectacle Rock and put an end to him, taking the Triforce of Power and freeing the Princess Zelda. As I said, the story is pretty simple, almost generic, which was in fact the point. They weren't yet trying to build a full universe, just a kingdom for the game to take place in. Being the first game, it doesn't require any knowledge of other games to understand, though the Zelda franchise is quite welcoming to new players in general. There are really only 4 named characters involved in this story: Link, Princess Zelda, Impa, and Ganon. All 4 of those names can be found placed on different characters throughout the series, so they're worth remembering. However, outside the direct sequel, the only one of these characters to actually appear in other games is the bestial boar himself, Ganon. The others are simply reincarnations. This is true of most instances of these characters. While trying to understand the timeline early on, in my experience, I started by watching the evolution of Ganon as a character. Since he appeared throughout the timeline, I could use his current state to determine where different games took place in comparison to others. For this game specifically, the first thing to look at is the fact that he's, well, a demon. While it wasn't mentioned in this game, he wasn't always such, as we'll see come A Link to the Past. He's also seen with the title of the Prince of Darkness, both providing an obvious Satan allegory and important information about where he stands amongst the monsters of the world. Finally, and possibly most importantly, is how he dies. He's hit with a silver arrow. There are numerous fake-out Ganon deaths throughout the series, but this is one that's still treated to this day as an actual death, to the point where his resurrection is an important plot point in its sequel. Because of that, it's worth noting what is actually able to kill him. As this was the first game in the series, it was the first appearance of many staple items, enemies, locations, and concepts. Because of that, we're only going to narrow it down to the most important few. We'll start with locations. The most obvious of these is the country itself, Hyrule. This is where a majority of the franchise takes place, so it's pretty important. We see a map of a small portion of the country, and learn a little about its history and structure. Within the kingdom, we're also introduced to a number of landmarks that we see elsewhere, like Death Mountain, the Lost Woods, and Spectacle Rock. There's always been questions about the exact layout of Hyrule, and if you're into map speculation, you're going to want to keep an eye on these places. There are also a number of important concepts depicted in this game. First, the concept of demons and how they work. While in the American localization, Ganon is referred to as the Prince of Darkness, as mentioned earlier, a more accurate translation would be to call him the Great Demon King. Both titles imply a royal status, and the latter shows that he rules over the demons of the world. While we can't say for sure which enemies are demons at this point, what we can say is that demons are at least somewhat organized, and that they are opponents of Link. While Hyrule's religion is expanded upon in later games, in the original title, we are faced with a very different kind of faith. While we're introduced to a polytheistic belief system in Ocarina of Time, the Japanese version of this game actually has a lot of references to a very different religion, Christianity. While it's never flat out stated, it can be assumed that a lot of the popular religion in Hyrule at the time used a lot of elements that we on Earth connect to that specific religion, and changed over the ages, much as many religions in our own world have changed from their inceptions. This explains both the Christian symbolism and the very different religion introduced just a few games later. This will be discussed a lot more in depth in regard to later games. The power of music, which is only touched on, is still present within this game. There is one item, the Recorder, which will teleport Link to already completed dungeons, and is actually required to drain a lake in order to access the 7th dungeon. Music becomes very important in later games, especially after we reach Ocarina of Time. And of course, is the granddaddy of all Zelda concepts, the Triforce. It's introduced here with absolutely no explanation. The only things we know are that it exists, it is split into multiple parts, and has both power and wisdom. It can be assumed based on the name that there is a third part, but nothing about it is ever mentioned in this game. It's also shown that each of these separate parts can be split into smaller parts. We don't know what it does or why it exists, only that it is exceptionally powerful. Outside Ganon, the state of the Triforce was always a major focus in demystifying the timeline. Since it appears in almost every game, its status can help make things clear. At the start of this game, it's split into pieces, with Ganon holding the Triforce of Power and the Triforce of Wisdom separated throughout the world. By the end, both the Triforce of Power and Wisdom are in the hands of the hero Link. Since this is the first game in the series, for now, we'll leave it standing alone, as it was meant to do. It'll serve as the basis for our timeline as we expand from game to game, weaving the tapestry that is the Legend of Zelda franchise. So thanks for watching, and be sure to tell us what games and series you want us to cover in the comments. Don't forget to check out the rest of the videos on this channel, as well as the channels of everyone who helped make this video. And until next time, thank you for exploring the deepest lore.